BT-13 and AT-6.
Did you fly anything past the T6?
B-26.
A B-26? That's a big airplane.
Well, a twin engine.
Yeah, yeah.
Flew
You didn't
65
fly the
com-
4-engine one then?
No.
flew 65 combat missions.
65.
Yep.
Where at?
There's one of those in the
Uh,
museum.
Yes, there is.
European
A
theater.
European.
Well, I started out in England and moved over to France and Normandy and then I think I finished
Yeah.
my mission flying out of Normandy.
Okay. Were you in the Pacific or were you in
I
the
was
Europe?
on the west coast, I didn't make it back that.
Oh, really?
European
I
theater.
was hospitalized the night before we were shipping out for rupture of things.
Seriously?
Yep. And my bag went, everything, I lost everything I had, I didn't get anything back.
So literally
On the boat.
your baggage went
Yeah,
and you,
I was AWOL.
hopefully you didn't get in trouble for
I
that.
was downtown Frisco and that, and they picked me up off the street.
Well, that must have been then, it must have been late in like 45 or something?
Yeah.
So by the time you recovered,
Yeah.
things were over?
Pretty well, I mean, I got in on some of that, building a runway up in, Washington to land the big one, the 4-engine one,
The B-29?
B-29,
Okay.
all gravel. I drove a gravel truck up there.
Seriously?
Oh, God, we hauled gravel, we hauled gravel, we hauled gravel. You know how much concrete it took to put that thing down on the ground?
I can't imagine. Well, because when they're heavy, they use a lot of runway.
You just mix it and go, and you just keep on going.
Yeah.
Cement trucks are there, and gravel trucks, and
Yeah. Well, at least, Bill here was getting shot at, right?
Yes, we were.
So,
88 millimeter German anti-aircraft guns, they got pretty good at them.
well, were you doing most of your work at night or during the day?
Day.
Low altitude or high altitude?
Oh, 10, 12,000.
They call it medium.
Not high enough, huh?
No, they go a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
Because they worked on the 17s and 24s, they were up 30,000.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they could get them up there.
Yeah. But you never, did your airplane ever get shot up?
Oh, yeah, we caught some flack now and then,
Did you?
yep.
Could you feel it? Could you feel it hit the airplane?
No.
Okay.
Now, if it hit a gas tank,
Well, sure.
the wing,
Yeah.
you would have heard it.
Or a
Or felt it,
or a hydraulic system or
yeah.
something like that.
But we picked up some flack once in a while, but not very much.
Yeah.
Of course, the biggest thing is, we were never really saw anything of ME-109s or FW-190s.
Oh, you didn't?
They were all back in Germany waiting on the 17s and the 24s.
Oh.
And they took the beating. We hardly ever saw a German fighter plane, once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
but the 17s and the 24s, they certainly saw a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I know the 17s, initially, it was really tough on the 17s.
Oh, yeah, sometimes, they'd lose 30% of their planes.
Yeah,
Wasn't uncommon,
yeah.
but
boy, that junk is laying down in the bottom of the ocean.
I know, right? There's got to be tons of airplanes, and
Tons of airplanes and boats laying down in the bottom of the ocean.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys, we're going to fly in August, in early August with you guys. We're going to go look at the airplane here in a little bit, and so you can inspect it. Because I want to make sure you're satisfied with.
You had to inspect your own airplane,
My
didn't you?
eyesight, so I can't really see.
That's
a whole
okay.
lot.
That's okay. You can get the idea.
I don't think I was ever at a base where they had any steermans.
Really? Where did you do your initial training?
PT 19, and I PT 13.
Do you remember the base where you were at?
Well, yeah. Helena, Arkansas
Okay.
was where I went through primary, and Walnut Ridge, Arkansas was
That must have been basic.
PT 13,
Yeah.
and
The Dothan?
AT 6 was in
Is it Dothan?
Dothan, Alabama.
Okay. All right.
Napier Field, I think it was, I think.
Yeah. So where did you start your training, Frank? Where did you go to basic training?
Fort Lewis.
Fort Lewis. Oh, you were a West Coast guy.
No, I went to
Fort
Arkansas,
Lewis.
someplace.
Okay.
Basic training in infantry training. That was 22 weeks.
Yeah. Did you like the rain out there? I guess if you're coming from Ohio, it's not too bad with the.
In the wintertime, it's terrible. out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I went through two basics. I went,
About 32, 34 degrees and wet.
I know. It's cold.
Cold. It's just the damn cold.
Yeah.
You get
So where did you go to basic?
well, I went,
down to Arkansas, that's south.
I went to two basics. I went one in the combat engineer in, where the heck was it?
Belvoir, Virginia.
Belvoir, Fort Belvoir.
Fort Belvoir.
And then I transferred near the end of basic, and I didn't like that basic in the combat engineers at all.
That was a lot like work, huh?
Oh, boy. So anyway, they opened up a possibility of transferring to the Air Corps.
Okay.
And I kept thinking, gosh, them guys flying around up there got a pretty good deal. And, anyway, I applied, and they took me
Huh.
for pilot training, so I ended up in pilot training and got my wings and my commission and
It worked
ended up
out.
in port in the European theater.
Now, when you got out, did you fly as a civilian then? Did you?
No.
You didn't? Okay.
A little bit. You said he
Did not.
flew Piper Cub in Sydney.
I flew some for a guy by the name of Russ Poker who owned the Sydney Airport,
Okay.
and he talked me into flying people around Sydney. And it had been used to one of these airplanes,
Yeah.
Piper Cub or whatever they.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were anymore. So I did a little flying until we had twins, and then that had higher priority than flying.
Then management put a stop to it, huh?
Yeah.
I asked him why he didn't make it a career of flying. He said
Yeah.
he didn't have near the hours of what like
Flying is the low
C-47
expensive
pilots
thing.
had.
And a family at the same time.
And
that doesn't
they were
work.
looking for the guys that flying hundreds of hours of training, and
Yeah. Commercial.
Well, you guys are gonna get back in the air here very soon. How does it feel to get to know you're gonna be riding in a World War II era airplane again?
you'll be different.
Did I hear you say you did not train in a steerman at all?
Never saw a steer, well, I can't say that, I don't know. But no, I never flew a steerman. PT 19,
The 19 was a Fairchild, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of
I
wood.
think.
With wood, I think it had wood wings, and it wasn't a biplane. It was a
Right.
single wing, open cockpit.
Yep.
Right.
Dad, tell him the story of your first flight in a PT-19.
Well, the first flight, we were stationed along the Mississippi River. And I don't remember the instructor at all, but of course he rode in the back seat and I rode in the front. But the first day up, he made sure that my seatbelt was fastened, which I never wore a seatbelt in my life until then. And I checked it and I looked okay to me, so he just rolled it over upside down and down the
It fell out of
Mississippi
the
we went. And hanging by the seatbelt. That one's, I thought I made a big mistake at that point in time.
That was your first flight?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I guess if that doesn't wash you out, nothing will, huh?
So Darryl, what sparked this fabulous idea? What made you decide this is a good thing, we need to do this?
Well, this is Chris and Mike that have
Hey,
sat
Chris.
down beside
Yeah.
of you that are
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
do the interviews.
Well, and I appreciate you guys. You've done this for us before, right?
Yeah, but thank you.
Yeah, well, so we started the foundation back in 2011 kind of on a whim. My dad had a biplane, the Stearman, restored in Mississippi. And he called me in February of 2011 and said, look, will you go to Mississippi, because he'd lost his medical, will you fly me back to Oregon? You know, that's like 20 gas stops. I mean, it's like, that's a long way to Oregon from Mississippi. And I said, absolutely, I'm in. Just tell me when you're paying the gas, it's your brand new airplane, let's go. And so I'm in the senior living business. And so I knew some people along the way, and I thought, well, why don't we just stop into some airports and give some World War II veterans some flights? You know, just because we got to stop anyways, right? And that's how it started, just kind of by a fluke. And so we gave 25 flights on the way back. It was just such a magical experience that my wife actually, when I got back, I'd call her every night. I was so excited about meeting you guys and flying and everything. And when I get back, she goes, well, you got to keep doing this. You know, why would you stop now? And so she formed the nonprofit, and she made me promise that we could fly as much as we wanted, but if there was no money, there was no flying. So she got us our nonprofit. My goal was to raise money and take veterans flights. And so, you know, we're given 4,200 flights. And I got to thinking 2 years ago. So I've been doing this 10 years. 2 years ago, I got to thinking, you know, we just kept flying less and less World War II veterans, you know, because guys are getting older, you know, and I said, you know, we need to dedicate a special mission just for World War II veterans. And so that's what we're doing. I mean, I hatched it. I was on a flight from Peoria, Illinois to Dallas in a little commuter, and I was jammed in that seat. And I literally thought up the idea right then. And so when COVID hit, we couldn't fly anybody. So we took that time to prepare to do what we're calling Operation September Freedom and fly only World War II veterans from August 1st to September 30. And we've got 950 signed up
You have.
in
Over how many locations?
49 states and
49 states.
49 states. We're gonna take the airplane you guys are gonna fly in. I think it's I can't, you have to bear with me. We have 6 airplanes. But this airplane you're gonna see today is actually gonna be shipped to Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And that's the plan, so that we can fly on the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
Because there's 2 survivors that were on the Arizona. And we're trying to make arrangements to fly them during the ceremony.
Well, you got 2 survivors.
2 off of the Arizona.
Yeah, I want to say, it's probably going pretty well.
It is.
We had one in Boston, but he died too.
Did he? Yeah.
Well, my dad was chairman of the draft board for Shelby County.
Okay.
He was also a first sergeant with the Ohio 83rd Infantry Division in France in World War I.
Okay.
The war.
In World War
going to
I.
end all wars
Yeah.
for 25 years.
Yeah. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. So did you guys volunteer to go in?
I was drafted.
You were
I got
drafted?
drafted.
You both got drafted?
I went to Columbus with the thought of enlisting,
Yeah.
but another guy and I had, we couldn't make up our minds what we wanted to do, so we did not.
So Uncle Sam made up your mind, huh?
So we got that greeting letter.
Oh, you did?
Then I couldn't get a release from the draft board.
Really?
Then they drafted me.
Yeah,
That's
go
what
figure.
Well, who has been the oldest person and the youngest person that you've flown?
We have flown now keep in mind, normally we fly veterans and seniors that live in nursing homes, assisted living centers, and retirement centers. This year, for this operation, we've gone outside of that. Okay, so I flew a lady in Lawrence, Kansas, who was 104. Okay, and we flew a gentleman down in San Antonio who was 104. Those are our two oldest.
Wow.
And it was so sad because I was scheduled to go up. Once somebody reaches 100, we'll fly them every year if they want to fly. Normally we only fly people once. But once you hit 100, you're in the Century Club. And you can fly every year. And so I flew Norma up there in Kansas. I flew her 3 years in a row. And I was fixing to fly her at 105. And she passed about a month before we were able to get up there. So, you know, but so that's kind of how we do our criteria. So those are the two oldest.
Now that you've been doing this for several years, what does it mean to you personally that you get to enter these people's lives and give them the ride of a lifetime?
Here's the deal. I did not serve in the military. Literally, when I turned 18 was the first year that they made you go sign up for the selective service. After Vietnam, they canceled the drafts and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember going down at 18 and signing up for the selective service. And then my dad was in the military, but it just never worked for me. I wanted to fly, and I'm colorblind. In the military, you can't fly. Back then, you couldn't fly if you're colorblind. So I never got in the military. But this, to me, is my service. And I've said this 1,000 times, and it's still true today, is, you know, when Frank and Bill get in that airplane and I'm sitting in there with them, I am in the presence of greatness. They would probably argue with me, but it's true. Because I just recently visited the World War II museum in New Orleans, and have you guys been there? It's amazing. If you have a chance ever to go.
Museum.
It's the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, and I honestly didn't understand how precarious things were in December 7, 1941. And literally, if Germany and Japan would have done a couple things differently, it would be vastly, the world we live in, or at least our United States, would be very, very different. I didn't understand how close we really were to that.
At all.
No.
No way.
And so when I get to meet people who stepped up and did what they did and sacrificed, it's unbelievable.
Well, we were fighting two major wars at the same time.
I know. And if Germany hadn't have picked on Russia, and if Japan hadn't picked on China, it could have been a very different, there could have been a very different outcome. But what the United States did, and you guys did, to gear up, literally overnight.
Can you tell me why does somebody want to have so much power? Why?
I don't know.
Would you, that's what causes the trouble.
Yeah.
Somebody wants all the power, but why do they want it?
History repeats itself, right?
God would have to breed that in home some way along the line to get somebody to do it.
It's both a curse and a benefit of human nature. But that's it. And I honestly thought when I started doing this, it was just sort of by accident. But I've often said, I'm not independently wealthy, so I have to work. But if somebody ever put a wedge between me and work and the foundation, I would quit work. I'd live out of a suitcase.
You said you have 10 aircraft?
We have 6 operating airplanes,
Okay.
and then we have 1 dedicated solely to pilot training.
How many
Because
pilots do you currently have?
we're working with 30 pilots. There's probably going to be some will be ready, some won't be ready. It's a little bit like a military operation. We're having to gear up to do something that isn't normal in today's standards, and there is no playbook. And so we started a training program specifically for pilots.
Where's
And
that based?
It's in San Antonio. It's in Castroville, Texas.
Well, along those lines, how many people do you have in your organization working for you?
Well, there's 2 people on the payroll, okay, because we have to. One is our director of maintenance for the airplanes, and one is our director of operations, who is the core. But everyone else is a volunteer. We all get paid in satisfaction, okay, which is pretty amazing for a national organization. Because we want people, if we started introducing money, you'll appreciate this as a banker, Frank. When you start introducing money into things, it messes it up. And I've told people all along, if you came along and said, I'll give you $250,000 a year to go out and fly and do this, I would say no. Because I want to do it because I want to do it. And that's the way I started. And so I want people in the organization and pilots in the organization, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's hard work, it's long hours, but I'll tell you what, we're paid in satisfaction, and I think we're overpaid.
Who is picking up the expense though?
Well, Sport Clips,
They're picking it up.
okay, I got
All them people.
Veterans United. You guys will meet some of the Veterans United people this weekend. American Airlines does all of our travel, okay? And hundreds of other volunteers, or people that donate.
Well, Frank ought to be one of the interviewers, because he just nailed my next question, how important are sponsors?
Yeah, they are. Well, we depend 100% on donors.
Darryl, Wendy wants you to cover some things about the 3 generations of family so that they can
Yeah.
incorporate that into their pieces as well.
Sure, I'll talk about that a little bit. But back on the donors, I want to tell a little story on Sport Clips, because this tells you the kind of people that we've been fortunate enough to work with. This was a shoestring operation, and I was the only pilot, and we had 1 or 2 airplanes, because they were my airplanes early on, and I'm sitting in Chicago in 2013, the day after Memorial Day. And I'd just flown flights in Rantoul, Illinois, and I get an email from Sport Clips. And it says, hey Darryl, basically it said, hey Darryl, we see what you're doing for veterans, and we love it. How can we help? So, we have a handshake with Sport Clips. They literally say, go out and fulfill your mission. All right? And we started, I laugh and I joke with them, and I said, I responded with, you'll like this, Frank. I responded to that email, I said, send big check. But no, we've been at a 9-year relationship. And, but that's the kind of spirit. It's like, hey, it's not a contract. It's a joint effort to recognize people that have done a lot for us. And most of our donors are that way. It's amazing. Go ahead.
The 3 generations.
My grandfather bought a Stearman in 1946. And it's the Stearman that we were in Urbana with 2 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
That was my grandfather's Stearman. He bought that in 1946. He flew it. He was not in the war. He was a farmer, a wheat farmer. And he got a dispensation because he was producing food for the effort. His brother was an instructor, though, a civilian instructor down in California, and he advised him to buy a Stearman, which he did. And my dad took his first biplane flight with my grandfather in that Stearman. I think he was 12 or 13 years old. And he fell in love with it. My dad did. My grandfather sold it. It went to a crop duster up in Washington, okay? And they crop dusted with that from 1948 to 1982, continuously. Because I spoke to the mechanic and the pilot that flew it that entire time. It was never wrecked, which is amazing.
Never wrecked?
Never wrecked, which most of those were wrecked at some point in time. So,
He done good.
in 1982, my uncle bought it back because he had tracked it, and it was, he was an ag pilot. He fertilized with it for 3 or 4 years and paid for it, and then it was just trashed. In the meantime, my dad bought a Stearman in 1982 and introduced me to it. I fell in love with it, so I started flying in the 80s in Stearmans, and my dad's Stearman. And then run the clock forward, I had to work, I had kids, you know, I had the whole thing, but I had bought a derelict Stearman along the way to restore myself. And in 2004, my uncle called me up and said, hey, I'm gonna sell Grandpa's airplane. I can't afford to restore it and I don't have the time to do it. And no, keep in mind, this is when I'm in the middle of a restoration project already that my wife's upset at me writing checks for. Or she's writing the checks, I'm sending her the invoices. And I just blurted out sold. So,
Attaboy.
yeah, so now I have 2 Stearmans to restore. And so we completely restored it, and it's been a wonderful airplane. And so that's the 3rd generation. My grandfather started. My grandmother was actually a pilot.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, she got her license in 1958.
Nice.
I have the little trophy or plaque that William Piper sent congratulating her.
No way.
Yeah,
That is neat.
yeah. And so then my dad became a pilot, and if I wanted to stay in the family, I had to become a pilot.
So did you ever fly with your grandfather?
I did.
Okay. Did
I
he let you
did.
take the stick?
Oh yeah, in fact, it took some doing, but he finally let me fly his airplanes. He bought another Stearman in 1985, and he let me fly that one a little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned that you got married, had kids. Do any of your children have a desire to become the 4th generation?
Nope. My nephew is a pilot, my brother's kid, and he's a pilot. He's a professional pilot, but he's never flown the airplane.
Maybe he needs to get in the seat.
I've tried to persuade him, but he kind of beats to his own drum. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Stuff happens.
Right? Yeah, it happens, and you know, it's not for everybody, but I got hooked early and often.
You know, after the war, everybody was gonna be flying airplanes.
Yeah,
Boy,
yeah,
that sure got knocked in the head in a hurry, didn't it?
Yeah.
It didn't get off the ground.
yeah.
But it was, I mean, that was the thing, I mean, everybody be flying, I mean, playing forward, put them in your garage and all that,
Well, you guys might relate to this, but my grandfather,
that happened.
it's funny how my grandfather got interested in aviation. He was 17 and he bought an Indian motorcycle. His dad was so mad at him, he made him take it back. He said, I'd rather have you fly than ride that motorcycle. And so he said, by golly, I'm gonna fly. That's how he got started.
Hey, Darryl, quick question, which I couldn't answer for Dad, and I looked on your website and I couldn't figure out,
Okay.
where are you from?
Carson City, Nevada.
You're from Nevada, okay,
Yep.
okay.
I left there yesterday morning.
Okay, and you flew all that way with the Stearman?
No.
No.
I flew courtesy of American to Nashville. I got a ride from Nashville to Tullahoma, Tennessee, and picked up the airplane and flew it to Lexington, Kentucky last night.
Okay.
And then I came in this morning.
Okay, I was gonna say, that would be a long flight from Carson City.
You know, did you know Vernon Hooker? Vernon Hooker, he had an Indian motorcycle, I used to ride with him a lot.
Well, I'd love to have one of those
If we go
now.
by
Yeah, I know.
motorcycle,
Bikes.
I'd ride with him, and then I had a car, and then we'd go other places with a car.
For some reason, my great grandfather hated motorcycles.
An
I don't
Indian
know why.
motorcycle.
Well,
Crazy drivers, I
About
guess.
how many days a year do you spend on the road?
fellow by the name of
flying or
Darryl
getting ready to
Sellers, who
fly?
later
In
became the
2019, I spent
Presbyterian
200
minister.
days on the road.
You what?
I was gone 200
Darryl
days.
Sellers
Yeah?
had an
And you still love it?
engine, I
I'm
think.
more excited about it now than
And he
ever.
took me a ride on his motorcycle around the square at about a 45-degree angle. And I never
I think
got
we're
on
gonna
a
go over here.
motorcycle since then.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
If I had money, I would
Yeah, the old
just
Indian
work it over to you guys. I
motorcycle.
just absolutely love what you do.
If it wasn't for
That's
my
it,
wife,
there's
I'd
an
be flat
Inman
broke.
and there was
Because
another
everything
thing.
would go.
I can respect that.
But again, you know, a
Harley
lot of these
Davidson,
organizations get founded by people that have the money and they just pay for everything.
well, Harley
And then you
Davidson,
don't
was
get the
that,
right culture.
Yeah,
And
Harley.
we've been able to get a culture
Was that
that
an
people
old-
want to do this. And
That was a
money
motorcycle.
hasn't.
Harley Davidson was a
And
motorcycle.
I'm really trying to keep
Okay.
it that way.
Well, I don't know if I
But
told this
the
to you, but I'm
Indian-
sure
Darryl
I need to
Sellers
get
had
some
a Indian.
sweatshirts and
I
t-shirts
know.
and hats to sell, because I refuse to wear like designer brands, but I want to promote you.
Okay.
that's the
we'll
last
work
thing in
it
the
out.
world I'd ever want, is a motorcycle.
All right, guys, let's go see the airplane. What do you say? Wanna
Sounds
go
like a
look at
plan.
The airplane? All right. I gotta make sure you're comfortable with it. We're gonna get you guys a ride in the car.
Oh, nice.
All right?
Yeah, I've lost most of my eyesight,
Yeah.
so I can't tell anything about it.
Well, we're gonna let you touch it and feel it, and Frank will tell you. Frank will talk you through it. Frank will tell you if it's good or not.
You know, I
Looking forward to riding in it, but.
Oh yeah,
haven't,
seriously. My grandfather never did.
I can read the newspaper, I can read without glasses.
Wow.
But
Good eyesight.
hearing.
Your hearings, yeah, yeah.